Let's continue with Daniel's prophecy of the deceitful little horn, which is a symbol of the United States of America. In this prophetic scripture, we shall learn of the national and international policy of America toward universal Freemasonry. And through America's policy, also America shall cause craft, or Freemasonry, to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace, meaning prosperity through safety, shall destroy or decay many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, which may be a prophetic reference to the separation of church and state. But America shall be broken without hand, meaning decay from within, or self-destruct. Now, let's consider each of these scriptural characteristics of the little horn and apply them to America's history. The policy of America has been to allow Freemasonry to prosper universally. Most students of history are unaware that World War I was a Masonic war to bring about universal revolution, after which a one-world government would be established. Dr. Carroll Quigley, past professor at Georgetown University, in his massive book entitled Tragedy and Hope, informs us that in the 1860s, the hierarchy in European Freemasonry selected 33-degree German Mason Otto von Bismarck to negotiate treaties that would divide the continent of Europe into two warring camps. Monarchies called Central Powers in dark brown, and democracies called Allied and Associated Powers in light brown. When Bismarck died in 1898, Europe was poised for a grand Masonic revolution to topple the remaining vestige of European royalty. All that was needed was an international crisis to trigger world war. We shall consider four of them, the last of which worked. First, in 1908, when Austria-Hungary announced their annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, it became known as the Bosnian Crisis. In 1909, International Scottish Rite Freemasonry retaliated by printing propaganda against Germany and Austria in an attempt to incite uprisings in Serbia. This caused an alliance to form between Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro against the larger world powers. In 1910, Grand Orient Masonic lodges throughout Switzerland, France, Hungary, Serbia, and Italy staged 3 military actions in an attempt to trigger a European war. Instead, it triggered the First Balkan War of 1912. In October of that year, the Balkan League declared war on the Ottoman Turks. Since the Balkan allies were quickly victorious in conquering territory in the shaded area, England, in May of 1913, thwarted all-out war by negotiating a treaty between the warring factions. Bulgaria, not happy with the settled outcome of the London Treaty, started the Second Balkan War in June of 1913 by attacking Serbia and Greece. Again, a European conflict was thwarted by a treaty signed in Bucharest in August of 1913. The fourth and final event was Sarajevo, where on June 28, 1914, the assassination of the heir to the Austrian-Hungarian throne took place. 2 years earlier, on September 15, a high Swiss Grand Orient Mason, when speaking on the subject of the heir to the throne of Austria, said of the Archduke Ferdinand, "He is a remarkable man. It is a pity that he is condemned. He will die on the steps of the throne." 1 year before his assassination, the Archduke told Count Czernin, "Freemasons have resolved my death." The assassination plot was hatched at the Scottish Rite Masonic Lodge called Narodna Odbrana, founded earlier in 1911 by Freemason Karl Framarsch. This lodge furnished the bombs, guns, and ammunition for the 8 assassins. The Masonic lodge that carried out the assassination was called the Black Hand Lodge. Grand Master of the lodge was Colonel Dragutin Dimitri, chief of Serbia's intelligence bureau. Dimitri went by the code name Apis. 2 of the assassins are seated below, Gavrilo Princip on your right and Trifko Grabez on your left. All 8 assassins were members of the Black Hand Lodge. 10 minutes before their assassination, Franz and his pregnant wife are photographed leaving Sarajevo City Hall to tour the streets in a black 1910 Graf and Stift limousine which had been borrowed for the occasion. The rear half of the roof was folded back, exposing the couple as easy targets. On June 28, 1914, as the car slowed to turn a corner, Principe, who was within a few feet of the Archduke, pulled the trigger that put all treaties into motion that started World War I. In this picture, Principe is being apprehended. During the trial of the 8 assassins, while World War I was raging around them, one assassin admitted, "In Freemasonry, it is permitted to kill." Not only did Freemasonry trigger the war to end all wars, it also held secret cabals throughout the war to prepare for its aftermath. 5 full months before the end of World War I, the 33rd degree Supreme Councils of all Freemasonry throughout the Allied and neutral nations were summoned to Paris, France, to discuss the formation of the League of Nations, which was Grand Orient Freemasonry's first attempt at world government. Here we have a copy of the cover and title page of the minutes to that International Masonic Congress of Allied and Neutral Nations, which was held at the headquarters of the Grand Orient Lodge in Paris on June 28th through 30th, 1917. The Paris Peace Conference was held 18 months later on January 18th, 1919. The Treaty of Versailles was signed at the Peace Conference on June 28, 1919. In this picture, we see military aides of the Allied peacemakers peering through the windows of the Paris Peace Conference. At the moment this picture was taken, the humiliating peace terms on which the Allies had agreed were being handed to a stunned and deeply angry German delegation. Not only did the treaty take away all of Germany's territorial possessions, it also demanded she pay war reparations to the staggering sum of over $56 billion, an unfathomable amount of money in post-World War I days. 6 months later, the Masonic League of Nations met for the first time on January 10, 1920. The League consisted of a council of 10, an assembly, and a secretariat. It was the duty of the League to carry out the demands of the Treaty of Versailles to strip Germany of all her territorial assets and to collect annually the enormous sum of $500 million until the $56 billion was paid. As every student of history knows, the severity of the Versailles Treaty guaranteed World War II. Hitler knew who triggered the Great War and was thus opposed to Freemasonry. This does not imply that the Führer was righteous in his acts. We must understand that Scripture teaches Satan's kingdom is divided, in this case, Hitler on one side and Freemasonry on the other. However, since Freemasonry is a counterfeit of Judaism, Hitler mistakenly persecuted Jews with the same severity as he persecuted Masons. Mackey's Encyclopedia tells the story of Hitler's anti-Masonry. In 1927, Joseph Goebbels set up an exposition in Berlin to display regalia, furniture, books, etc., taken from Masonic lodge rooms. In 1933, and in almost one of his first utterances as Prime Minister of Prussia, Hermann Göring declared that in National Socialist Germany there is no place for Freemasonry. In the fall of 1935, Freemasonry was charged with being engaged in subversive activities. Hitler called for the immediate disbandment of all lodges throughout Germany and ordered a confiscation of their property. Although Italy was on the side of the victors during World War I, there was post-war knowledge throughout Europe that Freemasonry had triggered the Great War. Hence, anti-Masonic sentiment had spread throughout the continent. By 1922, Mussolini's fascists marched against Freemasonry at Rome. Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry informs us that late in 1923, young fascist toughs began to burn, loot, and destroy lodge rooms and their furniture, even in Milan. On January 10, 1925, the Parliament outlawed the fraternity. In a debate on the bill, Mussolini thundered, "The bill will demonstrate that Freemasonry is out of date and no longer has the right to exist in the present century." By the time Mussolini opened World War II with the rape of Abyssinia, Italian Freemasonry had become completely obliterated for the time being.